Hello, I'm Lily and welcome back to my podcast. This is where I chat about my designs, projects, all that kind of knitting stuff and a few other things as well. And yeah, it's been a little while. Kind of took an unplanned hiatus there. I've had exams, I've had just various things on, and yeah, it's kind of the podcast took a bit of a backseat, and knitting kind of did too, to an extent, over a few weeks when it was only the one exam, but it was like a really tough one. So yeah, I'm in my 5th year of distance learning now, and that kind of was my priority for a few weeks. I figured it was better to just throw myself into it for a few weeks and then throw myself back into the knitting world afterwards, rather than trying to juggle both too much. But yeah, anyway, I'm back. I'm very excited to be back. I'm sure nobody missed me too much. I'm not going to be like, oh, how did the internet go with my videos? I'm sure nobody's too concerned, really. But yeah, so I thought it'd be nice to have a little chat and an update. Today it is I can't remember what date it is in June, but the weather does not look like June, so I'm in a cardigan. I'm not just wearing it for the sake of a video, I'm wearing it because it is actually quite chilly, so that's kind of annoying, but at least it gives me a chance to get them out there. Get my little pink one cuffs. Yeah, I've shown this one quite a few times before. It's my pink one cardigan, sort of cropped, mauled, poofy sleeved, frilly cuffed. Stitch going on there. But yeah, it's rather appropriate for a pretty dull day today. So, as for what I've been working on, my main sort of focus is a autumn collection that is coming out obviously later this year, that I'm not showing anything of yet, so we'll just sort of leave that to one side. But what I have been working on, last time I showed you this project it was just a couple of inches of rib at the bottom, and now I've actually finally made progress. So I thought, whilst I'm doing my exams, I'll just work on a project that is somebody else's pattern. Then I don't have to think about grading and test knitters and all of those other things. I can just knit. And in my head this is going to be quite a quick project because it's Aran weight and it was a simple pattern and everything. But I think I don't know, maybe it's because it was in pieces that it seemed to go a bit slower to me, or the embroidery that's made it take longer, but yeah, it's just taken longer than I thought. But anyway, this was the original one that I made a few months ago. Was it? Yeah, a few months ago, which was part of a collab with Wool and the Gang. This is the daisy vest that I did like an Instagram reel of. So that was the embroidery on there, little item there. So this next project that I've been making is the cardigan that kind of goes with that as a twin set. Don't know how often I'll wear them together, but you know, nice to have the option. And I actually think I'll wear this cardigan loads, so that's what I've been working on. And I'm not too far off finished, hopefully in the next couple of days, but I've been saying that for a while. So this is where I'm at with it. This is called a Fortune cardigan. I think it's classed on the Wool and the Gang website, whatever, as an intermediate pattern. So there's nothing too technically difficult about it, really. It's worked in pieces with a 1x1 rib and knit pearl pattern on the bodice, which you can see a bit more clearly there without the, don't know how well it's showing up on camera. I haven't got any contact lenses in, so I can't really see the screen all too well. But yeah, with the embroidery, which that last project, the vest, was the first time I'd ever done any embroidery on knitting, and I actually love how it looks, and I think I'll wear this loads. So that's kind of my motivation to get cracking with it, because it's another good one for days like today where you want to look all spring and summery, but the weather is not playing ball. So I've been making my way through. I totted up and I think it was like 116 or 118 flowers that would need embroidering on the whole thing. Getting there. I've done the back, done one front, done the other sleeve, or the first sleeve even, so just randomly chosen colours all the way over it. Need to trim those ends a bit. And then the second sleeve I'm up to here on. So not too far to go. I mean, look at all these ends. I decided to tackle some of the ends and the embroidery before it was finished, just because I thought it would be a mammoth task if I left it to the end. I mean, when I did that vest, the pattern said to sew it all up first and then do the embroidery, but partly because I wanted to do this reel where I was like, oh, it appears, oh, the back appears, and all of this. Partly for that reason, and partly because I just thought it'd make life easier, and it did. It made life a hell of a lot easier to embroider on a flat item rather than, you know, I thought trying to embroider on a sleeve that's already sewn up would be a real pain to do. So I've decided to embroider them flat, and then I think I might block it first as well actually, and then sew it up. It's kind of unfamiliar territory because I haven't done anything in pieces in so long. Certainly not a cardigan anyway, but it's working out quite nicely. Even the button bands are actually done separately and then sewn on, which I find if you do a neat job of it, which don't want to brag, but I think I'm quite good at doing a neat job of these kind of things, it looks really neat around there. But you have to kind of be quite, I found I had to be quite intuitive with sewing that on rather than being like 2 in every 3 or 3 in every 4 or something matching. So obviously it's done separately because they're done on very different gauges. This is on a 5mm, this was on, I use a 3.75, and obviously this is rib and this is not. So rather than using a strict ratio for my mattress stitch, I sort of did 2 rows from one and then 2 rows from the other, and then every time it looked like one was sort of getting out of sync, I dropped down to 1 on one side. That probably doesn't seem to make sense at all, but basically I didn't follow a set ratio. I just kind of was like, that one needs to catch up now, needs another one to catch up. And then I altered that slightly around the bottom of the V-neck. Oh, sorry, I'm not holding this up very well, am I? Just to make it go smoothly around there, and then again around the back of the neck. So yeah, it looks nice in the end, but I'm kind of ready to have that done now. That was supposed to be my during exams no thinking project, and here I am a week after my exam not bloody finished it. So better crack on up there. But yeah, that's mainly what I have been working on, other than lots of swatching. Yeah, lots of different techniques, different possible colour work things for autumn. Yeah, undecided on that one. Stripy things, different stitchy things. Got that's up my sleeve. But yeah, I've been mainly working on that, so hopefully I will have something finished there to show you soon. It won't be in this sort of scraggly ends all over state that it currently is. Another recent project that I've done some of the work on is this Avonham cardigan, which is one of my designs from last year that I just actually wear quite a lot, even though it's, I guess it's a little bit more formal. It's this one here. I'll show you that properly in a minute. But yeah, I wear it a lot, so I thought it'd be quite nice to have another one. So my mum has been doing the majority of the knitting on this one, of the main body. I then did the neckband and the button bands, picked up around those. She's not so keen on picking up stitches, so that was my job. And now she's been working on the sleeve here, so you can, so much of my hair gets knitted into these things. So with this pattern it's worked in a 4-ply or fingering weight yarn. The original I used a hand-dyed merino cashmere nylon, so a mainly woolly based yarn, but this time it's in a cotton, and this particular cotton is a discontinued local brand, so there's nothing for me to link for you, but it's actually a marled yarn. I think, I can't tell exactly how many strands of each, but I think it's 2 of white and then 2 of the pale blue, so it gives this sort of slightly mottled effect that I really like. And then I found a matching ball of Fibre Space Cumulus, which is creating a slightly different effect actually on the sleeves. So if I show you the original, you can see the sleeves here are very, very floaty. I mean, on the mannequin they kind of hang down at the sides like this and dip, which isn't the greatest look, but when it has an actual arm and shoulder in there, you're more like here and you get this more level, not hemline, it's not a cuff, whatever, end of sleeve line at the bottom, which is done with an I-cord bind off, my idea being that it would sort of replicate the look of bias binding on a sewn item. So that was the original version, which I did the sleeves in a mohair silk, can't remember the exact percentage, I'm pretty sure it's 70-30, The same as is available through many different brands, that kind of standard silk mohair, and it's very light and floaty. However, for the sleeves on this one, I wanted to use something with slightly more substance. Well, I wanted to use this yarn and it turned out to have slightly more substance. So this is at Fibre Space Cumulus, which is technically also a lace weight, but instead of the fluff coming from mohair, it comes from brushed alpaca. So this is, I'm pretty sure it's 74% baby Suri alpaca and 26% silk. So, you know, very similar in the percentages, but now it's alpaca. And it has, you can't really tell the difference, I suppose, too clearly because this has got a needle in it, so it's obviously holding its shape out there, but it's just got a little bit more substance, a bit more oomph to it. So sleeves will maybe not be quite as floaty, they might be more poofy. We shall see. I'm happy with either floaty or poofy. They are both good with me. So this will be nice to see how this knits up. And once it's got the edging on it and everything, and add a little bit more, there's still plenty of sleeve cap to go there, so it'll have more weight to it. And people often ask this with my patterns, they're like, is it really this many rows in the sleeve cap? Am I really knitting like 70 rows? I think, yeah, that's the trick. You don't just do a little shallow sleeve cap, it's got to be big. So yeah, they kind of go on forever, but it is the main chunk of the sleeve done in the cap. So this isn't a new pattern, just a reknit of an older pattern, which I'll be interested to see how it does look in this, once it's finished. Because one thing I have found is that for this sleeve to work, it has to be done in a yarn that doesn't curl. And the yarns that don't curl are mainly those that are fluffy, because it kind of pushes the stitches away from each other. I'm sure there's a more technical way of explaining it, but that is the end result. That if you used a lace weight non-fluffy yarn, like just a lace weight merino, you would still get the curling effect that you normally get with stocking stitch, and these sleeves sort of want to flip up a bit here, so worth considering, but I don't think that'll happen with this either. They should hold their body quite well. It's just been nice to have a second version, have a play around with that. It's on fairly tiny needles, so not the speediest project, but it produces a nice item, so you know, we can deal with the tiny needles. I've also actually, that makes me think, I've managed to finally crack knitting Continental style, which is not something I ever thought would happen. Can't remember whether I did mention about my dodgy elbow on here in my last episode, I think. But that was basically the push for me to try knitting differently. That I would normally knit English style throwing, although I did see a video the other day actually that it called lever knitting, that I thought, oh, maybe that's actually more similar to what I normally do. I'll have to hold my arms up just for the frame here, I obviously don't knit like this, but I would normally knit with the yarn in my right hand, not wrapped around my fingers or anything, literally just running through my hand, and I, rather than sort of going like that to wrap the yarn around the needle as you would be taught at a beginner class, you know, sort of yarn around like that, I would naturally go to sort of just dip my left arm and just sort of dip it under the yarn. So it's kind of small movements from both sides, and I think that's what did my elbow in, that my left arm was basically just going like that constantly, and this top of my elbow joint was really not comfortable, so I forced myself to not knit for a week or however long that actually lasted for. Don't think it was a week. I thought I really just need to crack this Continental knitting, because if that's potentially faster, that is great news for me, and if it gets rid of this elbow pain, then even better news. So what finally made it work for me, I need to grab some yarn to demonstrate, just random yarn here, was instead of, I kept seeing videos from people knitting continentally, and this has never worked for me, either knitting or crochet, was with people having the yarn sort of taut up with their index finger extended and having the yarn up across that. That just never worked for me. I don't know if I just don't have the dexterity in my left hand to do that, but I just could not make it work. However, once I tried actually just wrapping it around my hand, I should have needles in hand here. Why don't I just use this project? Let me get sorted. If I actually just had my needles, my yarn wrapped around my hand, and closer to the pattern, to the fabric even, I could make it work. So if I just knit a few stitches there, I shouldn't even be knitting at this point in the pattern, but you can see my hands sort of are all really close. That worked for me, and I finally managed to get Continental to work, and I still don't think I could knit for hours and hours on end without getting a dodgy elbow, but it's definitely better than it was. But what I still can't do is the Continental style with your fingers up here and just flicking like that. Doesn't work for me. So yeah, for basic knitting and purling and basic decreases pretty much, I've found I can manage Continental style, but I still, for picking up stitches, for anything twisty or anything else like that, I've still been going back to English style, because maybe it's just because I'm still getting used to it, but to me it seems like if something's just a plucking action, you're just, with Continental, you're just kind of plucking at the yarn rather than actually wrapping around and anchoring it once you get back. That doesn't feel like you're ever going to have as much control. So if you're trying to do decreases, trying to do particularly picking up stitches, anything that requires you to sort of wrap that stitch around and keep it in place, say if I was trying to do bobbles or something like that, I can't really see how you can, to me it doesn't make sense that you could ever have the same level of control over your yarn with Continental as you can with English style. But maybe that's just lack of experience with it. I mean, I have got 15 years of experience knitting English style in about 2 weeks, or a month maybe, of Continental, so maybe it'll just come to me. But yeah, it does seem to make sense logically, taking my own experience out of it, that you would have a lot more control over the yarn English style, which then slows it down, but makes it better for fancy things. So who knows, maybe I'll be knitting everything Continental one day. I never thought I'd see the day where I knit a single stitch Continental, and here we are. But yeah, so it seems to be, whenever I've mentioned it on Instagram, it seems to be a topic that people get very passionate about. Some people can't understand how you'd ever knit English style anywhere near as fast as Continental, when really if you're well practiced at it, you can get pretty quick English style. Yeah, and some people are like, I'm never knitting Continental, and to be honest I was one of them, but here we are now. So yeah, I will see how I get on with my next few projects, because I've also found that I think tiny needles aren't doing my elbow any good. So when I knit the button bands on the Avenham cardigan, and I made a baby cardigan and a baby hat, which have now been gifted, and the baby has been born and she looks very cute in them and they fit, so that's nice. Yeah, so I've been knitting a few things on really tiny needles, like around a 3mm, and I don't think that was great either. So I'm sticking to a DK and up for the time being, I think, and that's hopefully going to keep the elbow pain at bay, because that's just so inconvenient. I find that within the kind of generally creative worlds, often things come up just by meeting people and chatting about things, and you know, getting different contacts and everything like that, and it's quite nice how things kind of organically evolve. So over the last few weeks I've done some photography work, like a local yarn shop that's moved to a new location, photographing there, and I mean, what a nice way to spend a morning working than photographing a yarn shop. I made sure I stood on a step and photographed from the ceiling and lying on the floor to get the good angles, looking up the shelves and all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, so that was the Ethel&M shop in Lancaster, where I was last week. Lancaster is actually a really nice place for crafty people. There's a few different yarn shops, a few different haberdasheries, and it's a nice little town, city to walk around. It's about half an hour away from me, so I do find myself up there sometimes. Good place if you fancy going to check out the yarny offerings. Yeah, so I've been doing that, and also done some styling work for a local brand. I don't think I've mentioned them on here, but these guys that make these shoes, that I first met a few years ago after I went to a sample sale and bought some shoes there, ended up sharing them, got in contact with them, been working together for a couple of years, and then I've been involved in creating the women's range. So this is Lanks shoes. I've been chief shoe trier honourer, inputting the design, choosing the colours, everything like that from the start. And yeah, and then the photo shoot for that was a couple of weeks ago, so I'd been doing the planning and styling and everything there, so that was nice to do as well, just kind of using my skills across variety of different things, which I always really enjoy. Keeps things varied, and it's nice now that the world is opening up a bit. You can do that kind of thing, so who knows what else I'll be doing over the next few months. Now that I've finished uni until next February, just because of the way my modules worked out, that the final module I have to do only starts in February, and I chose to have a long break rather than overlapping things, because I just thought, you know what, I don't know if I'm actually going to use this degree at the end of it anyway, not in the near future, quite possibly further down the line, but as things are, I want to carry on with my creative pursuits, and whilst that's going quite well, I may as well stick to it, so rather than rushing through my degree. So it'll be 6 and a bit years by the time I finally get my bachelor's in astronomy and planetary sciences, but here we are. Just that physics exam that went, I'm not convinced it went very well at all, but we'll find out in a few weeks, and there's no point, just decided there's no point dwelling over it, there's no point thinking about it, even though I sat the exam at home and I could keep looking over my answers and keep looking over the paper. I'm just sort of push it out of my mind now, there's nothing to be gained from doing that, and may as well focus on my knitting instead. Yeah, so that means I've got quite a few, the longest time I've ever had in my life since I was literally 4, that I've not had exams, or, well, not exams, but been out of education, because I went straight from A-levels to uni, then to part-time uni, and it's just been exams every June for the last 9 years. And now I'm done, because I don't have an exam for my next module, so that's kind of strange, but it's a nice feeling to be done, and I'm just going to see how things go over the next few months now that I've got more time to spend on it. Because I was only part-time with uni, so it shouldn't have taken that much of my time, but obviously during exams it's going to be kind of, might be able to get away with doing 1 day a week through the rest of the year, or 1 or 2 days, as I kind of was, and then near exam time it's obviously going to have to be a lot more, but I found it was more the kind of brain space that it took up, just thinking, I've got this in the back of my mind, and if I was working on grading a pattern or something, I'd feel like I should be revising instead, because I would hate to think, oh, I could have got a better grade in that if I'd have just shelved that design for a week. So yeah, I thought that was the best approach. But hopefully I will have more knitting projects to share next time, because I'm working on an autumn collection that's all going to come out together, but I'm thinking of also doing a couple of other standalone patterns. Don't know, we shall see. So I've also been very lucky to receive a few different yarns over the last few weeks. I shall just grab those. This is my selection. I've not got every skein here, but I think I've got one of each. So I think I've mentioned before the Knit Crate subscription that I've very kindly am offered on a sponsored or gifted basis. So I've had 4 months from them now. I chose the Earth Tones pack, I think, mainly because much as I love brights, I really don't do like bright greens, or I'm very picky about my brights, so I thought it's safer to go with something that I know I will like, and I do really like these 4 here. I can't remember which ones I had with me when I last showed you, but basically with the subscription you get 2 skeins a month of a different yarn each time. So we've had a few different types of yarn, but I think so far they've all been between a DK and an Aran weight, and all 100-gram skein that you could get quite a bit out of. But as you can see, they're all fairly fluffy and fairly autumnal, so I'm kind of saving that. Might even swatch some of them together to see if I could get a project out of 4 skeins, because then that could be something more substantial, but we'll have to see. Because what I really do want to make sure I do with these, whether it's my own design or someone else's pattern, or an old pattern of mine, or whatever it may be, is to really think about, I think you have to really choose carefully when you're using fibres like these. So for example, this is Ordine Wool's Bloom in shade Forget Me Not. It's 80% alpaca, 10% silk and 10% camel, but it's a chainette kind of construction. So it's quite bouncy, and I feel like it would make something that would probably work brilliantly for cables, or something quite lofty, quite bouncy and plump. whereas, where was it, the other one? This one is 90% alpaca, so it's only 10% more alpaca than the other, but if you look how drapey it is, it's even in the skein, it's really floppy and drapey. This one is called Vidalana by Knit Crate Celestial. And I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but it's a really nice sort of multi-tonal steely grey with blue hints to it. Very me colour. But yeah, this is super drapey, so will not work well at all for anything that you want to be substantial, but will work really well for something with a nice drape, a nice sheen. Maybe a cowl, or maybe that would collapse. I'll have to have a really good think about it, because you really can't just say, oh, it's the same weight of yarn, it's fine, it's a similar-ish fibre. That really just does not work. You know, particularly with something slinky like this, that if I made a whole garment in it, it would be quite heavy, and it would pull out of shape. Just because you've got the same gauge on something, it does not mean it can just be substituted and used for whatever you want, really. With yarns that have such definite characteristics like this, the real flop to it requires a lot more thought, so I don't want to rush into that. And I think it'll be good for autumn anyway, so that's the 4 that I have from Knit Crate so far, and I'll pop a link to the subscription page, which is an affiliate link that I have, and you can use the code LilyKateMakes to get 20% off your first order with them. I also received some very nice cashmere yarn from Quing. Do they pronounce it Quing or King? Yeah. From Quing Fibre, their new Souffle Pure yarn, which is another kind of chain construction. I haven't actually swatched this yet, but it's a fingering weight yarn with very generous yardage, and I have these 3 skeins to play with. Might see if I can get something out of those, although I would be quite nervous about putting that with these 2 in case it runs. So yeah, I have that to think about too. So I feel very lucky to have been sent these yarns and a couple of others, but I do try to keep my own designs in mind when I'm actually thinking about what to do with these things, and that means that if I haven't got something appropriate, then I won't just use something because someone sent it to me. I will only ever actually design in a yarn if I think it is right for the purpose and I actually like it. So, you know, hopefully that means you can trust my recommendations. I won't just use whatever gets sent my way. And I think that's all I had to share today. Is there anything else I've got on the needles? I need to finish these 2 cardigans because it's sort of been hanging over me. I feel like I need to mop up projects. And then I've got another one that someone has, I actually had someone sample knit for me for the first time ever, which I've never had anyone else do it for me before. It's kind of scary, but she did a brilliant job knitting half a sweater, and then I wanted to pick up the rest of it to have a play around with. So that's next on my list, another autumn pattern there, and I will have lots to keep me busy over the next few months. So thanks for watching again anyway. It's been lovely to chat, really. I don't know how long I've been chatting for, but yeah. Thank you for watching, however long it may have been, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye!